Welcome to the Garrett Cadet Podcast. I am Garrett Cadet, and today I'll be talking about the Canadian aviation industry and all the new things that have been released and announced this week. And there isn't I would say groundbreaking news, but there's a lot I want to talk about. And that's what this podcast has become, is a way where I can info dump about the things that I want to talk about. And I have a lot to say, and I might as well just have a place for it. I tweeted or posted on X for the first time in almost 8 months, and this is maybe 10 months. And I had enough to say where I'm posting on a platform that I haven't really touched in a long time. So the podcast is obviously a great space where I'm not limited to the amount of characters. So I'm going to be talking about the announcement from Air Canada today, the announcement from WestJet, the announcement from Porter and Air Transat. So there's lots of news when it comes to the Canadian aviation industry and what it means for consumers and travelers. So to kick things off, Air Canada started by announcing today that they'll be giving economy class passengers an upgrade. Their words, not mine, where they will be providing free beer, wine, and premium snacks for economy class. Now you might be thinking, if you're familiar with the Canadian aviation industry, now that sounds a lot familiar and similar to what Porter's offering is in economy class. And you'd be right. I do think this is a direct response to Porter and matching their economy experience when it comes to the in-flight offering that both airlines offer. Porter, with their E195 E2s, has really encroached on Air Canada's market and foot traffic or air traffic when it comes to their presence at Pearson. Ever since they got their brand new Embraer aircraft a couple of years ago, they've been really chomping at the heels of Air Canada and being this direct competitor, where previously Porter had the Toronto Billy Bishop Island Airport, and they just had that, and that was it. They had the D800s or the D8s, the de Havilland aircraft, the props, and that's all they really had. But now they're becoming this really dynamic and unique boutique airline that is starting to turn some heads. And I'm glad that they're getting some of the recognition that they deserve, because I believe a lot in what Porter is offering to Canadian travelers and to the North American airline industry as a whole with all they are providing. So to get back to Air Canada's announcement, they are free beer, free wine, free snacks within Canada and the US until the end of the year. And they haven't promised anything further than that, but they have kind of matched what the offering is for Porter. And by the announcement, that is kind of what Porter serves as far as destinations, US and Canada. So you could say that is in direct competition to Porter, and that's exactly what Air Canada is doing. And I did think that Air Canada needed some response to Porter. Now, whether they can truly capture that or even match the same brand sentiment that Porter has currently, I would say the Porter brand sentiment, or how consumers or the general public feels about Porter Airlines, is fairly positive, where they are kind of this, I don't want to call them a newer airline, but comparatively to Air Canada and WestJet, they are newer, but they definitely aren't new to being an airline. They've been operating from Toronto Billy Bishop for a long time, and that is kind of been where they played in as this regional airline. But now they're launching flights to California, Florida, Vancouver, Halifax on the East Coast. They're all over US and Canada with their brand new Embraer aircraft. And Air Canada is taking notice, and I'm sure that they are subject to a lot more passengers saying, hey, Porter's offering this. We want this, and we want this ability to enjoy economy. And a lot of Porter's marketing and advertising over the last 6 months has been about putting them in direct competition to Air Canada. I've seen ads on Facebook, on Instagram, and they've been rolling out this marketing and advertising where Porter's shown what they have in blue and white, as those are the brand identity colors, and then white and red, as those are the Air Canada colors. So you could say, you could have this or you could have that. And they've been putting themselves in direct competition when it comes to their onboard or in-flight product towards Air Canada. And I think that's been a really effective way for Porter to really communicate to the flying public that, hey, you could fly Air Canada, or you could try Porter or fly Porter, and you could have things like no middle seat, front to back boarding, free fast Wi-Fi for everyone on board because they are an all economy airline. And then you have the complimentary wine, beer, and premium snacks. And word for word, you do see that it's the exact same terminology that Air Canada used. Porter says complimentary premium snacks, wine, and beer, and Air Canada has that same wording in their press release today. So it is in direct response. And the more and more that Porter flies out of Pearson and starts to tackle some of the Air Canada airports that they've flown out of in the past, like Ottawa, Halifax, Toronto, Montreal, Porter's seeing this really significant growth, and they do have a lot of E195 E2s coming into their fleet and more to be added in the next couple of years. And you will see bigger and better growth from Porter Airlines as the flying public starts to take notice and they start to really come into their maturity as this, I would say, young international full service carrier airline kind of thing. So Porter also made another announcement today, coincidentally. So there's been, like I said, there's a lot to talk about. And that's what kind of spurred or gave me a thought to say, hey, maybe I should do a podcast on this. So that is what I'm doing. So the other airline from Porter Airlines and Air Transat in a joint statement said, starting today, you can book a standalone segment with Porter or Air Transat and benefit from an extensive network of destinations. In practical terms, this means you can now fly Air Transat, offers an extensive range of destinations across the Caribbean and the South, and then Europe. But Porter has the Canada and US network now, thanks to their new Embraer aircraft. And I really love this partnership. I left a comment on Air Transat's Instagram post announcing this, and I think it's just a really good fit. I'm a fan of both airlines. I have flown Air Transat, transatlantically from Toronto to Amsterdam, and I'm sure I've flown them in the past, or maybe I just go to Amsterdam because I do fly there a lot. So I've used Air Transat before, and I do think they have similar consumers, and they bring different levels of personality, and they aren't trying to be like Air Canada or WestJet. And it's a really complementary route network where, like I said, Air Transat has Europe and the South, and Porter has North America, being US and Canada. Sorry, Mexico, not just yet, but you can fly Air Transat down to Mexico. Having the ability to have this really close partnership, and it's feeling closer and closer like a joint venture. It's not quite there yet, and they'll probably remain independent, but it wouldn't surprise me if they became a company or had a closer relationship formally in the future, just because of how well their networks fit together when it comes to their product offering as far as destinations go. They are airlines with fairly newer fleets, with Air Transat's being the A321LRs and their new Airbus aircraft, and then the new Embraer aircraft. There's a lot to like from both the airlines, and I love to see a joint loyalty program or a credit card where you can take advantage of that. Currently, I'm in WestJet dollars, and I have a WestJet MasterCard collecting the frequent flyer points and WestJet dollars, but I'd love to be able to switch to something like Porter and Air Transat and take advantage of my daily spend going towards an airline and a route network like that, just because I identify more with what Porter offers. And I think their approach to aviation and what they've done for elevating and influencing the Canadian industry when it comes to airlines has been really beneficial. And I think this is why competition matters so much, because we're seeing airlines like Porter make Air Canada make changes by elevating the experience. And it's not a race to the bottom to see the lowest fares or the lowest prices. And it's just about what can we offer consumers better than the others. And I hope that airlines continue to do this and continue to work and be the airline that everyone wants to fly, not we are making money as an airline and people have to fly us. I hope that really changes because there's such a negative sentiment around Canadian airlines. Statistically, they're some of the worst performing airlines in the world when it comes to on time performance and all other kinds of delays. And it's always been seen as this kind of duopoly when it comes to the Canadian aviation market. But now we're seeing in the last couple of years, there has been some changes. Flair has the ultra low cost segment kind of covered now that Swoop and Lynx are no longer. Flair has to hang on. I still don't think they're probably financially stable airline, but it is making changes in the aviation space when it comes to Canadian market by serving secondary airports, by lowering ticket prices, and just providing an alternative and an option to those who want to travel on a budget or those who don't need the premium snacks, free beer and wine. That's a different customer segment. And a lot of times when you are flying at a secondary market, you don't have those luxuries or options or extras that come in economy. It would be great to have, but as my home airport of YKF or Kitchener Region of Waterloo International Airport, Flair is the main airline that services the airport, and WestJet's in there. But that's more or less all we've got. And it'd be great to see Air Transat launch some service to the south or even flights to Europe. That would be amazing. Right now, Play Airlines flies out of Hamilton, but it'd be great if Kitchener-Waterloo had that option from YKF. It's a great airport. Love flying out of there. And I try to whenever I can. Thankfully, Air Canada has launched their landline bus, I think it's called that, their bus service from Hamilton and Kitchener directly to Toronto Pearson. So it's giving me some options because there's no additional costs when it comes to flying now with Air Canada from Kitchener because they do have these bus connections to then fly from Pearson. So it's always been the drive to Pearson, but now that's covered under one ticket at no extra cost. So that's, you don't have to pay for airport transport to Pearson, or you don't have to pay to park at Pearson with the parking rates. And compared to Kitchener, it is cheaper than Pearson. There's lots of benefits. So it's really made me as a consumer that's not super close to Toronto really consider where I want to have my loyalty when it comes to airlines. And do I want to experiment and have fun and enjoy things with Porter and Air Transat as they are destinations I would want to travel to and use more frequently and try out different products? Do I want to stay with WestJet? I don't know. But that is the perfect segue into talking about WestJet, as yesterday, WestJet made an announcement that they have replaced their basic fares with a new branding called UltraBasic. And you might be thinking, UltraBasic, what is that? So UltraBasic means that it's the now lowest airfare that WestJet offers. So you have the Ultra Basics, Econo, and I think Premium is the final one. And with their statement, they've said WestJet is committed to providing our guests with fare options that provide affordability, choice, and flexibility. We want to empower our guests to choose the products and services that they value the most so they can match their travel experience to both their preferences and budgets. So that's a very interesting positioning on this. And WestJet has always been a low-cost airline, or they at least started as a low-cost airline. So low cost meaning lower operational costs, but also translating into lower fares because of the margins. But over the years, WestJet has become more like Air Canada. And it's always fascinated me so much that an airline that generally had a very positive brand sentiment amongst consumers, where you saw a lot of and if you're Canadian, you would have seen these in the last decade or so, where they were really enthusiastic, positive ads about WestJet employees being WestJetters and being very excited about working for the company and just really smiley and just friendly WestJetters as this really positive thing, as they were this airline with some personality. They did a lot of Christmas and April Fool's campaigns, and they still do. but the service hasn't really stuck out. The operational or customer service hasn't really stayed where it should have been. And that's obviously hard to change, especially if there's been a lot of operational issues. Because if a customer isn't happy that their flight's been delayed, canceled, whatever that operational issue is, their satisfaction, it will decrease and go down, especially if it's not weather related or something out of the airline's control. But for me, as a Canadian flyer, consumer, and a WestJet loyalty member, and very much part of the WestJet ecosystem, I've noticed a lot of changes that is making me reconsider and making it more difficult to stick with WestJet as an airline to choose for loyalty. Uh, like I said, I have a WestJet MasterCard, so I'm collecting WestJet dollars as I spend. And I've had it for probably at least 5 years. And I've redeemed 5 years, maybe longer. I've redeemed twice. Once being a flight from Toronto, Detroit, Amsterdam via Delta. And that was back in 2019. And it was a great experience. WestJet has a lot of affiliations with a lot of Sky team members like Delta, KLM. They even have partnerships with Qantas, who isn't a Sky team, but One World, where you can earn and redeem on those airlines at the time. So since then, I've tried to redeem to fly to Europe and take advantage of that Delta operated flight, and that just hasn't been possible. So it's felt really limiting when it comes to being an option to fly transatlantic, because I fly to Amsterdam. I love to travel to Netherlands, go back home to see family, and it just has been less and less of a desirable option, where I've used carriers like Air Transat or even KLM recently, where I've haven't really had an opportunity to use my WestJet dollars. And a friend of mine also has the same card and has lots of WestJet dollars, but it's so difficult to just kind of make sense to use those. The most recent time I used my WestJet dollars was to fly out to Calgary to go to Banff, and Banff is another destination that I love, and that's somewhere I could go every year and not kind of get bored of it, because I do. That is a special place for me. But that is the only direct route from YKF to Calgary for me, as my home airport is Kitchener, like I mentioned. So it is kind of difficult to find something outside of that. And since WestJet kind of reoriented the route map to more Calgary, Western Canada, which was always the case going back to the roots, but now there's more options in Toronto and Halifax and St. John's to even fly to Europe. But that would also mean that I would have to start in Toronto as my place of origin and then go Toronto, Halifax, or even Toronto over to Europe. But yeah, it just doesn't feel the same. Air Transat transatlantically on their transatlantic flights has seatback entertainment, IFE, and their narrow bodies don't feel like WestJet. Like, it's just different. And a 737 is not like an A321. It just really isn't. And yeah, it just feels different. As a customer and a consumer, I'm just not as satisfied with WestJet anymore. To get back to what my initial point about their UltraBasic, UltraBasic is quite a name as well as when it comes to branding. They probably could have kept basic. So with the UltraBasic fare, you're also not permitted to have any carry-ons. You can only have a personal item. So a personal item might be something that can fit under the seat in front of you. So it's not a roller bag. It's not anything like that. There's also no pre-assigned seats. So you will automatically be assigned seats at the back of the aircraft, in parentheses, including middle seats, that you are not guaranteed to be together when traveling with others. If you prefer to pre-select or select a seat, you have the option to choose your seat for an additional fee. And that's not quite different, but the putting that it could be the middle seat, or putting the risk that you might not even be able to sit together on a single booking, is a very odd way to put it. And it really is kind of this fair structure where they don't want you to choose this. And obviously, as a business, you want the customer to choose one of the higher revenue generating tickets. And UltraBasic is just there to have it, and they won't be the most expensive. But it does seem that it's harder and it's making flying more expensive for getting less. And in stark contrast to the Air Canada announcement, where economy passengers are at least getting free beer, wine, and snacks uh, with their flights, it just feels like a different approach where one airline is improving the economy experience and one is trying to have the lowest fares, which could be the case. Uh, but it just feels like really tearing apart what the economy experience is. And I think when it comes to value and the value offering compared to Air Canada and Porter, it seems harder to choose WestJet out of preference other than their routes. And I think that's very difficult. And it's difficult to uh, come to terms with, especially since I have been a WestJet fan of in the past. And I still enjoy WestJet, but it's not something where I choose WestJet over another. Choosing flights in the last year or two and looking at redemption for the WestJet dollars that I do have, it's become more expensive to redeem. The redemption rate hasn't been as good, and it it's it's yeah. I don't really have many words to say, but it's just very unremarkable, and it's not something that sticks out. Whether that's the product, service, there's not much there. And as a kid, and as a teen, I used to love WestJet that they had satellite TV and a good IFE system, whether that was flying down to Mexico or starting a holiday by watching Sports Center or something on the plane. And there's things to look forward to, but there doesn't seem to be that incentive or that personal connection anymore that I used to have with the airline. It is disappointing. And then the last one is the last two are there's no WestJet rewards earn and there's no eligibility for changes. And this is not to say that this is a brand new fare structure to aviation whatsoever. A lot of airlines do this and do have these fare types where you can't change your ticket and you're not going to earn frequent flyer rewards or anything like that. It just doesn't feel right. What I mean by that is if I've chosen to fly with your airline, and at the end of every flight, every airline will say, "We appreciate you of choosing, let's say, WestJet or choosing Air Canada, or you've flown with us today. Thank you so much." I think at the very least, earning some sort of loyalty with that would be nice. It doesn't even have to be significant, but to say that if you are on a budget and affordability, obviously, I don't have to get into that, but it's a hot political issue. It's just affecting everyone as Canadians. To not be able to have the assurance that you could sit with someone you're traveling with, whether that's a loved one or a spouse, partner, and to not be able to have some sort of earn on frequent flyer feels really tough. And obviously, if you want that level of service or you want that and you can pay more for it. But I think making air travel accessible or at least having some sort of thank you or appreciation to your traveler consumer would be nice. It's not a lot to ask for. And again, we are at the very bottom. And it is probably their way of maintaining lower costs and higher ancillary fees, as that's what most airlines are trying to do. But like I said this to a lot of friends over the years that WestJet's kind of had this identity crisis where they've been this low cost. They got Dreamliners and they tried to be this full service airline to compete with Air Canada. Haven't been able to abandon East Coast operations, not entirely, but significantly reduce their service to a lot of different airports and went to West Coast operations, launched some Asia routes, new management and new CEOs and leadership have reintroduced transatlantic service from Toronto and reintroduced Halifax and St. John's transatlantic service. And it's just kind of been, the focus has been lost, I think. I do think the reintroduction of East Coast transatlantic services is really welcomed, but it'd be nice to see them refocus on the customer and the customer experience when it comes to flying WestJet. Again, I want to get back to a place where I want to choose WestJet and I would pay a premium or choose them over another airline based on what their value proposition is. But currently, I can't do that and I don't want to do that. Like I said, I think when it comes to brands, you have to make sure that a customer feels valued. And like I said, I have a WestJet MasterCard. I like to fly WestJet because of the convenience of flying from my home airport or hometown airport. But other than that, that's it. And I can also fly Flair. And if I can't fly competitively on price, then there's not much more there. And even to redeem, sometimes for looking from YKF to YYC, Flair's still cheaper when I'm looking to redeem WestJet dollars. So it's really like, what are we working with here? And so it's very difficult. I feel upset about that. I am upset about that. That WestJet is like that now. How do I see WestJet continuing to evolve? Like I said, I really hope that they get back to that WestJetter marketing promotion, because a lot of Canadians feel like it's just another Air Canada. And I feel like Air Canada is even taking a step ahead when it comes to passenger experience by saying this is what we will provide on board. And yeah, I think Canadian aviation will need to continue to evolve and change and be more about the onboard or in-flight product, especially when it comes to these full-service airlines like Air Canada, Porter, Air Transat, WestJet. They aren't Flair. Flair will be Flair for as long as they can be. But yeah, it's an interesting market that we have in Canada, and it continues to be more expensive than other countries. But again, we don't have the same level of competition as you say the US or even within Europe. So we will see how everything evolves. I'm very excited about the Air Canada and announcements when it comes to their offerings in their economy cabin. I hope they keep this around. I hope that they see and hear feedback from customers that they appreciate this. This is appreciated. And I think when you are choosing airlines, you should want to win the customer's money or win the customer's business based on what you provide as an airline. And I think I know consumers will pay a little premium or a little bit more to receive more, marginally more, depending on the routes and competition. Porter and Air Transat, I am so excited for this. This is the most exciting thing for me, at least when it comes to what's happening in Canadian aviation, when it comes to innovative companies, when it comes to the synergy between these two companies, where we have a North American airline, we have a vacation, leisure-oriented airline, and what they can do together is really impressive and really exciting. And two airlines that really have a lot to prove when it comes to finding their market share. Porter with WestJet and Air Canada, and then Air Transat again with WestJet, Air Canada. And now that Air Transat really doesn't have to focus on North America with a partnership like this. So like I said, I really hope they have this loyalty program that's rolled out and can benefit from a lot of the destinations that they offer when it comes to North America, all-inclusive vacations down with Transat holidays and vacations using Air Transat. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'd love to try Porter sometime soon. It's been on my aviation AvGeek bucket list of things to try. Uh, so that's something I'd love to do, but I'd like to try it on their Embraer E195 E2s, probably from Pearson, and we'll see where I can go with that. So if I'm going out to Banff or Calgary, I highly consider Porter if it works or if it's less expensive than Kitchener. We'll see. Porter's usually not the least expensive, but they're not trying to be the least expensive. It's a different consumer, it's a different market. And again, that's why Air Canada has kind of met Porter with kind of some of the offerings that they provide customers in economy class. So those are my thoughts about the Canadian aviation industry and what's going on. And like I said, I had a lot to talk about. Really excited about this, and I just had to tell someone. So if you listened to the end, thank you. I hope to do more podcasting like this. Life has been busy in a lot of different ways, and I've been busy producing content, producing podcasts, videos, short form content for a lot of different brands and businesses with me freelancing and with my business. But I've kind of left my creative projects to the back, or just to it's not a priority, but I enjoy creating. So yeah, hopefully this is kind of a catalyst for some more activity or just me sharing what I think, because I have a lot to talk about. So I hope to use this more like a platform where I can just talk at length, whether this is like your friend on FaceTime or just someone catching up. That's also fine. I was inspired by Kennedy McMahon's podcast, and she was the lead and titular character from Nancy Drew, and she has a podcast where it's very casual and it's just her talking about whatever she wants to. So I like that format, and I think I'll do more of that and not put so much pressure of producing something. Yeah, because that can be a lot of pressure, especially creatively. Okay, I know I'm terrible with outros, but thanks for listening. For more frequent updates, posts, and content, head over to Instagram at Garrett Cadet. I also have a YouTube channel at Garrett Cadet. If you want to work with me, head over to garrettcadet.com. If you want to do any production work, or you want to hear more of my thoughts or work with me on that, you can connect with me on there. Follow or subscribe to this podcast on the podcast platform of your choice, and I will see, or you will hear me whenever I post a new episode.